Always lead with your main point. If you want to instantly improve your business communication and get more done, this simple technique will make you more effective in virtually every interaction. In this video, you'll learn when to use this technique and exactly how to put it into practice. Everyone's attention is stretched incredibly thin. We're all racing from meeting to meeting, drowning in emails and trying to keep up with an endless list of tasks and responsibilities. Our minds are constantly pulled in a dozen different directions, so when you take too long to get to your point, you lose your audience. And that's why leading with your main point is so powerful. Don't bury it under layers of context and background information. This is often referred to as bottom line up front, or bluff. It's a technique that originated in military communications but has been widely taken up in business environments. And the concept is simple. Start with your conclusion, or your request or key takeaway or whatever your point is, and then follow up with the supporting details. This way, if someone just reads your first sentence or listens to your first few words, they'll still understand your core message. This video itself is an example of the technique in action. I started by immediately telling you what the takeaway was and then went on to discuss it. The opposite would have been me presenting the situation, then slowly building up to my recommendation in some sort of dramatic conclusion or revelation. But we're not writing a mystery novel and trying to keep up the suspense. This is a business setting, and our goal is to be effective and achieve results. Unfortunately, I was well into my career before I figured all of this out. I would send these detailed emails and deliver lengthy monologues in meetings, meticulously explaining all the background and all the context before finally getting to my request. I used to think misguidedly that this demonstrated rigor and thoroughness. I wanted to provide value and get everyone on the same page, believing I was saving them the work of having to figure it all out themselves. But by the time I got to my actual request, people had either tuned out or stopped reading. And then I'd get frustrated with all the delayed and missed responses and having to constantly follow up and chase people for what were essentially very simple actions. I used to feel that in order to be concise, I'd have to cut out important pieces of information and therefore sacrifice value, which completely overlooks the fact that the value of the time saved by the recipient is infinitely greater. What makes this worse is that I didn't actually need to cut anything out. Just by starting with the bottom line, I would have achieved better outcomes while still including all the details I felt would have been relevant. That's because anyone could have chosen to skip anything they didn't need, since the main request would have already been successfully communicated at the very top. And I would have saved everyone, including myself, all the trouble. It's a relatively simple change in your communication style, and it delivers several immediate benefits. First of all, it encourages action. When the key information is front and center, stakeholders can see the request and take action more quickly, especially when they happen to already have the information they need. If they're forced to sift through a long email to find out what it is you're asking for, many won't even bother. Your message will not get through, and you'll be less effective for it. Second, it provides immediate clarity of purpose. Right from the start, everyone understands what's being communicated and why it matters. So if they do need further detail, that information is immediately contextualized before it's even consumed. Third, it significantly reduces miscommunication. When the main point is crystal clear, there's less risk that your message will be misinterpreted or missed entirely. And fourth, it dramatically improves time efficiency. Some people are constantly inundated with information. They're in and out of meetings all the time, buried in piles of paperwork, and receive hundreds if not thousands of emails every day. Getting to the point quickly is not just appreciated, it's practically essential. So now that you understand the power of leading with your main point, you might be wondering when exactly you should use this approach. But before we dive deeper, I want to clarify that everything we're discussing here applies specifically within a business context. Now, this technique can certainly be valuable in other areas of life, but not every situation calls for such a direct approach. But in business, where time and clarity are paramount, leading with your main point gets you exceptional results. So this technique can be used in nearly all your business communications. Think about those emails you send to project stakeholders. Instead of building up to your request through paragraphs of context, imagine starting with "Report X needed by Friday," or "What was the decision on X account?" Immediately your recipients know exactly what you need and by when. And the same applies to status updates and reports. Rather than forcing your audience to hunt for changes or progress, begin with a single line summary. Project on schedule. Milestones A and B completed, milestone C pushed back 1 week due to shipping delays. Everyone instantly understands the current status, and you can then go into as much granular detail as is appropriate for the situation. When you're delivering a presentation or some sort of proposal, lead with your value proposition or recommendation. Why make your audience wait until you're in slide 15 to find out what you're actually proposing? Not that you should have 15 slides in the first place, but we'll deal with that in a separate video. Put your core message front and center, then back it up with your compelling evidence. Even with things like performance reviews, start with the overall assessment. It sets the tone and frames the entire conversation, because rest assured, nothing you say will be heard until you get to the final verdict, so you may as well lead with that. Do the same when you're making an announcement about policy changes or reorganizations or matters that affect your audience. People want to know the impact first, then maybe understand the reasoning. And finally, let's not forget about meeting contributions. People speak for 5, 10, 15 minutes before finally revealing their position. By that point, half the room has mentally checked out. As I've said, I've done it myself many times. You could be doing it too, no big deal. From now on, don't do it anymore. Instead, state your position or recommendation up front, then go into detail if necessary. The good thing about all this is that it's very easy to do. There's no learning curve, no preparation, none of that. Just rearrange your information to start with your conclusion. You still express that conclusion at the very end, but lead with it too. So you make your point, explain what you just said, then restate your point at the very end. Now, if you want to be really effective, there are some tips and tricks you could use to supercharge this. Again, it's nothing fancy, you just spend a minute to think about how to phrase that main point to make it instantly digestible and actionable. The best thing you can do is to use action-oriented language. Strong verbs make your expectations clear and everyone immediately understands what's being asked of them. So instead of asking, would it maybe be possible for someone to check with the client when they have a minute? You should instead say, John, get the client's approval on X and let me know by 3 o'clock this afternoon. Now, the second version might feel curt or brusque, but remember, this is contextualized within a business environment. We're not being dictatorial, we're just being clear. You can still be polite and appreciative and say please and thank you, but be clear about what you want. No one's going to feel like they're being bossed around, and if they do, that's a separate issue which might be an opportunity for you to give them some feedback. Now, if you've been paying attention, you may have noticed I also made it clear who is responsible, for what outcome, and by which deadline. John, get the client's approval on X and let me know by 3 o'clock this afternoon. So not someone, John. This avoids misunderstandings and excuses where someone thought someone else was going to handle it. And if John can't do the task for some reason, I guarantee that after hearing their name, they'll perk up and speak out. So you can then ask someone else to do it instead. John is now also clear on what they need to do. They need to get the client's approval, but that's not enough. They also need to get back to me. The reporting of the task is just as important as the task itself, and we'll get into that another time, but for now understand how specific and clear the request was. Do the thing and report back. And do it by 3 p.m, not when you're comfortable or when you remember about it. The team depends on this reply to move forward, so make sure it's done by that time. And all of that is subtext. You don't need to clarify it. Just saying, John, approval by 3 and let me know is enough. And it's brief. It can be absorbed within seconds. In fact, you typically limit it to 1 or 2 sentences tops. Then, after stating your main point, you can provide the necessary detail for those who need it. It's important to understand that leading with your main point isn't cutting corners or eliminating necessary information. It's strategic sequencing. This approach isn't a replacement for details or evidence or justification. It's just presenting information in a way that makes everyone more effective. You're still providing all the relevant content, just structured a bit differently to respect your audience's time and cognitive load. Leading with your main point helps frame the details that follow, which will give your audience a chance to organize the information they're about to receive. You should also keep in mind that different personality types respond differently to communication. The action-focused individuals that you often find in executive positions, they typically prefer getting to the point immediately. They have a high up tempo and are used to making decisions very quickly. More deliberate thinkers might prefer having context before drawing any conclusions. This sequencing of starting with your main point respects both types of processors. The fast-paced executive gets what they want from the start, and those who need more context aren't really affected by 1 or 2 short sentences at the top. The delay, so to speak, is negligible. Let's go through some examples of how you would phrase your main point. Decision needed by Friday. Should we proceed with the new proposal at the increased budget of €50,000? Project is 2 weeks behind schedule due to supplier delays, but still within budget. Recovery plan attached. I recommend we prioritize European market expansion over others for Q2, based on 3 key indicators. Our solution will reduce your customer acquisition costs by 25% within 90 days through our proprietary targeting algorithm. You've exceeded expectations in client retention but need development in team management. Effective 1st June, our design and development teams will merge under Emma's leadership to improve product delivery timelines. Requesting 2 additional developers for 6 weeks starting 15th May to ensure we meet the quarterly release deadline. Critical issue discovered in production code affecting 15% of users. Immediate approval needed for emergency fix protocol. Q2 revenue exceeded targets by 8%, while expenses increased by 3%. Primary growth driver was our enterprise subscription tier. This 30-minute meeting has one objective: to finalize the marketing budget allocation for Q3. Please review attached spreadsheet before attending. Each one of these examples was brief, used clear, action-oriented language, and was specific about any dates or numbers. So start leading with your main point. You can then provide all the detail you need. This approach improves clarity, reduces miscommunication, it saves everybody time, and it makes you more effective at what you do. And if you want more actionable advice for balancing personal growth with business success, click on the playlist link in the description below and consider subscribing to this channel. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.